Good evening. In the name of the Father, Yahweh, of his Son, the Messiah, Yahweh Shai, I greet you this day with the word of the Most High. And it is Wednesday night, and we're going to be continuing our Wednesday night series. I don't know when it's going to end. I didn't plan it from the beginning. The Spirit of the Most High touched me to start it at the beginning of this COVID-19 pandemic, and we're continuing it. At some point, it may end. Don't be surprised if and when that happens, but at this point, we're continuing. Tonight, I've been impressed to share with you how to overcome a technique that our enemies have been using against us for literally thousands of years. In fact, they've been using it. Our ultimate enemy is Asatan, who is an evil spirit from the Most High. He was created as a covering cherub, and he decided he wanted to take the place of the Father. And ever since then, he has been using this technique pretty successfully, and with some exceptions, and we'll talk about that. But at the end here is where we live, in the end of time, the technique is continuing to be used successfully. But I'm here to tell you that because of the awakening that is taking place among the Hebrews, which are the so-called Negroes, the awakening that's taking place is going to stop the success of this technique. The technique is well known, and you have heard of it probably. It's called divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. It's been working against us a long time. It's working against us now, and they're going to continue to use it. I mean, why would Asatan change his tactics when he's been so successful at it? There's been some exceptions to this, and we'll talk about the exceptions because they are notable, and the exceptions also show how we're going to overcome this technique now, today, beginning at this time with the awakening that's now taking place. Let's get right into it, because I know I've been tending to go longer on Wednesday nights, and I don't want to keep you all too long, but I do want to get to the subject matter at hand. So let's start in Genesis chapter, in the beginning, as we often do. Let's start in Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2. And we'll begin Genesis chapter 2. We'll begin where Adam is already created and Eve becomes the created helpmeet for Adam, the father of human beings. So let's take a look at this in Genesis chapter 2. I'm going to begin Genesis chapter 2. I'm going to begin at verse 18. And I'm going to go from verse 18 down to verse 25. From verse 18, Genesis chapter 2, down to verse 25. Let's take a look at this here. And Yahweh Most High said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him." And out of the ground, the Most High Yahweh formed every beast of the field, every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an help meet for him. And Yahweh Most High caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which Yahweh Most High had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. Now this is significant right here, significant part. I'm gonna get some more light on my Bible here. This significant part right here. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." Okay. And again, the word woman here in the Hebrew is Isha, and the word man is Ish, also not only used for woman, used for helpmeet, also used for wife, Isha and Ish. Okay. And so she was taken out of man. Then therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Let's just talk for a moment of what we just read. So Adam and Eve were one on many levels. They were actually one flesh because she was taken out of his body and created from a piece of his body. So they were one flesh in the flesh. They were one in the spirit, in that the Father made Adam in his image, and he made Eve in the image of Adam, the scripture tells us. So they were in Father's image of light and truth and righteousness. They were one. Okay. They were also partners. She was his helpmeet. Helpmeet also means a partner. That's your partner. So in that a proper husband is not going to lord it over his wife as some oppressive ruler. He's going to understand that the wife is his partner, and that as partners they work together on everything. Okay, so they were one on many levels. So what happened? We don't have to read it to understand. Satan got between Adam and Eve and caused them both to fall. He appealed to her, he deceived her, and then he took Adam's love for her, causing both of them to fall. He manipulated them. That's the first one we see on the earth in terms of divide and conquer. Okay, but it wasn't the first time it was used. Let's look at Revelation chapter 12, which also gives us a little insight into the fall of Ansatan from the king, from the third heaven, from the heavenly courts. And let's go from Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12. I'm going to begin Revelation 12. I'm going to begin at verse 3. Verse 3. Revelation chapter 12, verse 3 and 4. Revelation chapter 12, verse 3 and 4. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So the dragon, it says, his tail, which is Asatan, his tail caused a third of the stars of heaven to fall. The Bible shows us in Isaiah, which we have studied before, but Isaiah chapter 9, what that tail represents. Isaiah chapter 9. Isaiah chapter 9, I'm going to begin at verse 14. I'm going to begin at verse 14 and go down to verse 16. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 14 to 16. This is describing the religious leaders in the ancient times prior to the first destruction of Jerusalem and their spiritual condition. But in such, it also describes a tale, which we just read about in Revelation chapter 12. Notice what it says here, Isaiah chapter 9, verses 14 through 16. Therefore, Yahweh will cut off from Israel head and tail, branch and rush in one day. The ancient and honorable, he is the head. The prophet that teacheth lies, he is the tail. The prophet that teacheth lies is the tail. For the leaders of this people cause them prophet that teaches lies. So Asatan was lying to the third of the angels, to the angels of heaven, and cause a third of them to fall. Divide and conquer. Let's talk about other examples of divide and conquer. Balaam was called to curse the Israelite people. He was called by the Moabite king to do so. He was unsuccessful, for every time he opened his mouth, the Spirit of the Father would bring a blessing. So what did he do? He counseled Balak, which is the Moabite king, to bring women into the camp. And many of the princes of Israel fornicated with these foreign wives and started worshiping their gods and divided the children of Israel and caused many of the children of Israel to die by a plague. Okay, again, let's continue. Divide and conquer. Let's talk about an unsuccessful attempt. Judas, the betrayer, he was approached by scribes and Pharisees, approached to betray Messiah, approached to try to cause division among the disciples. Unfortunately for Judas, prophecy was against him, for it was prophesied that there would be a betrayer, and he fulfilled that prophecy. And he was not successful in breaking up the Messiah's mission and stopping the work that the Messiah was going to do and breaking up the rest of the disciples. He was not successful. Let's look at another unsuccessful attempt in the book of Acts, chapter 5. Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5. Let's see, where do we want to go here? Yes, Acts chapter 5. Yes, Acts chapter 5 from verse 1. From verse 1. This is an important one because this, again, is going to also, with Judas, is going to play a role of showing us how we're going to overcome the divide and conquer technique. And we're going to talk much more about it in the next few minutes. But here in Acts chapter 5, beginning at verse 1, I'm going to go from verse 1 to verse 11. Acts chapter 5, from verse 1 to verse 11. Book of Acts, Acts of the Apostles, chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. But a certain man named Ananias, with Sapphira his wife, sold a possession, and kept back part of the price, his wife also being privy to it, and brought a certain part and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled thy heart to lie to the Holy Ghost and keep back part of the price of the land? Whilst it remained, was it not thine own? And after it was sold, was it not in thine own power? Why hast thou conceived this thing in thine heart? Thou hast not lied to men, but unto Yah. And Ananias, hearing these words, fell down and gave up the ghost. And great fear came on all them that heard these things. And the young men arose and wound him up and carried him out and buried him. And it was about the space of 3 hours later when his wife, not knowing what was done, came in. And Peter answered unto her, Tell me whether ye sold the land for so much. And she said, Yea, for so much. Then Peter said unto her, How is it that ye have agreed together to tempt the Spirit of Yahweh? Behold, the feet of them which have buried thy husband are at the door, and shall carry thee out. Then fell she down straightway at his feet, and yielded up the ghost. And the young men came in and found her dead, and carried her forth, and buried her by her husband. And great fear came upon all the church, and upon as many as heard these things. Now, what happened here? Satan was attempting to bring the spirit of greed into the congregation, into the church, into the Israelite nation of the apostles and the believers, the spirit of greed as a divide and conquer technique. It failed because the people at the apostolic church at that time, the Israelite people, were so filled with the Father's Spirit that Satan could not penetrate. And anyone that would be used, in this case, Ananias and Sapphira, to penetrate would be killed, would die from the Spirit of the Father. This gives you an indication of where we need to be in these last days. Because, brothers and sisters, as we know very well, divide and conquer has been used against us. Again, I mentioned it for millennia. For millennium. Every time, for example, the Israelite would have a king that was amenable to serve Yah and keep his commandments, there were always those among the people that were trying to bring other gods among the people to divide them. And you remember how the Most High was in the book of Deuteronomy very strict in terms of, he said, if any of your brethren or any of your father, your mother bring you, say, let's go worship other gods, he said, put that person to death, right? Because that divide and conquer technique was not going to get into the nation. But then whenever there was a king that could be convinced to go against Yah's commandments, the whole nation will be brought down. This continued on and off. When you read the book of First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles, you can see this over and over again. And then, of course, in the book of Judges, it shows us this as well. Let's move forward to modern times. Let's move forward to modern times. Anytime there is a movement among the Hebrews of today to gather themselves together, to organize themselves, to help for the betterment of their people, there's always been a divide and conquer. Let's go over a few of them. We had Malcolm X. At the time of Malcolm X's assassination, there were no less than 5 or 6 people posing as his ministers that were undercover police officers working against him to divide and conquer. Malcolm X had started the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which was the sister organization to the Organization of African Unity that was in West Africa. But through the divide and conquer technique of destroying Malcolm X's organization and killing him, the whole thing went to nothing. As we know today, there is no more Organization of Afro-American Unity. Same thing with the Black Panthers. They would infiltrate, that is, they being our enemies led by the FBI and the CIA, they would infiltrate the Black Panthers. They would cause divisions among the brethren, to the point the brethren started arguing with each other, and then they would murder off the leaders or arrest them or chase them off so that the organization would come to nothing. This has been going on for a long time. Let me tell you the modern divide and conquer, brothers and sisters. The modern divide and conquer, first of all, before I even go there, let me just say this to you. You can know when we are successfully moving forward by the reaction of our enemies. When they start to kill us off, when they start to try to divide and conquer on a very heavy basis, you know we're doing something right, because that's the way they try to destroy it. Later on, now we know, as a result, for example, the FBI had a co-intelligence program, whereby they were very much afraid of a Black Messiah arising, and they did several things. First of all, they put traitors in the midst of the movements, in the midst of the civil rights movement with the SNCC, in the midst of the Black Panthers, in the midst of the Nation of Islam, in the midst of Malcolm X, so on and so forth. And then what they also would do, as we are very well aware now, they would place their own people at leadership positions. You see, at the beginning, all of the so-called civil rights leaders were actually bought and paid for by Ashkenazi Jewish money. It was later on that Martin Luther King started leaving that, when he started speaking against the Vietnam War, when he started speaking against the poverty and the economic inequality. That's when he was murdered. He started waking up. See? And so they'll take puppets and place them at the head. Today, a couple of those puppets. One of them is a guy named Al Sharpton. Another one is a guy named Reverend Jesse Jackson. These men are paid for by our enemies, and they're placed in leadership positions to make us believe that they're leading all Black people, but they're not leading all Black people. They're placed there, and they're put on television, and they're put in their own shows, and they're on talk shows, and they create a fake thing between them and the establishment, but it's not really anything. They're all together, and they're to keep us quiet. And one of the reasons you will know this is the case, because Malcolm X was murdered, Fred Hampton was murdered, right? Khalid Abdul Muhammad was murdered, but Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson are thriving. That's how you know. Okay, that's how you know. Okay, brothers and sisters. So that's a divide and conquer, and it's continuing. What they're doing now, for example, you have in the United States of America 46 million so-called African Americans or Black people. I'm using the United States of America as an example because, as we know from prophecy, the Rome is the dragon. The devil's the dragon, but Rome is the beast that the dragon is giving power, seat, and authority to. And the United States is the puppet of Rome. The United States, the puppet of Rome, and its infiltrators, which are the Ashkenazi Jews, as well as the society, secret societies, as well as the various orders of the Roman Catholic Church, such as the Jesuit order. These various means are being used to control the United States, control the media, control industry, control everything. As a matter of fact, the divide and conquer technique is also used in war. I was listening to Sister Kathleen Cleaver today, and one of her interviews, many interviews she has done over the years, and she asked the question. She said, "Will somebody answer this question? Who won the Vietnam War?" She asked, "Who won the Vietnam War?" Now, the truth is, of course, the North Vietnamese won the war. The United States ended up withdrawing and running from Vietnam, and the North Vietnamese took over. The Viet Cong took over the whole Vietnam. But one thing she missed that was very important: there were actually two winners of the Vietnam War. One winner was, as I mentioned earlier, the Viet Cong. But another winner, which is even more important than the Viet Cong, is the corporations of the United States of America. Corporations that make armaments, weapons, bombs. They were big winners because U.S. tax dollars funded those corporations. Those corporations made billions of dollars off the war, and they make billions of dollars on every war, whether it's the first Iraq War, the second Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, the Vietnam War. They make billions because they sell the armaments that are used for these wars. For example, also during the 80s, it is now a well-known fact that the Reagan administration was trading arms, supporting rebels in Central America in exchange for cocaine, which they turned into crack, which they then came and delivered to the inner cities where Hebrews mostly dwelt, where they made hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on the sale of crack. Not only that, they made hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on the prison industrial complex, which is a collaboration between the private prison system, the U.S. government, right, and private prison system, U.S. government, and of course, who am I missing? Private corporation, U.S. government. Well, that's basically it, I guess. That's the prison industrial complex, brothers and sisters. Oh, the media. That's the third thing. There's the media, there's the private prison system, and there's the U.S. government. That's the prison industrial complex. That's a combination of these three, which are using the crack trade to not only make money, but arrest and kill black males, and those that are arrested are put into the private prisons. And again, the U.S. taxpayer is paying. They're paying for these prisons through the tax dollars. Okay, and so as I mentioned earlier, the U.S. taxpayer is paying for the corporations that make the armaments as well. U.S. taxpayers paying the FBI, the U.S. taxpayers paying the CIA. Are you getting the picture? The U.S. taxpayer, no matter what color he is or she is a slave to the system and don't realize it. It's divide and conquer. Okay, divide and conquer. And it's ongoing. It's ongoing. So with regard to the Hebrews, there are 46 million Hebrews in the United States of America, black people, so-called African Americans. 46 million. Okay? Approximately 3% of the 46 million households have assets that are worth $1 million or more. So in other words, there are 3% or about 1.3 million people of color or black people in the United States that are millionaires. Okay, 3%. So you have 97%, of course, that are not. And about half of black children in America, and this is all taken from statistics, Google it yourself, about half or 46% of all black children in America live below the poverty line. 46% of all black children. This is a divide and conquer. Let me give you an example in more stark specifics here. You have a Barack Obama becomes president. You have him pick also an attorney general, Eric Holder, as the first black attorney general. And somebody says, oh, black people are making progress. But while Barack Obama is president, many black males are gunned down in the streets. Prisons are still being filled. Taxpayers are still paying for private prisons. Crack, heroin actually increased under Barack Obama. So you have a figurehead that makes everybody think black people are making progress, where the real is we're getting worse. So you have an athletes, in the NBA, National Basketball Association, there are probably approximately, give or take, 400 NBA players in the league. Average salary in the NBA somewhere around $8 million a year. Majority of people in the NBA are Hebrew. They're black. Somebody would think that these black Hebrews are showing progress because they're making so much money. Some of them, like a Michael Jordan who's retired, become billionaires. Billionaires, not just millionaires. And yet, for the 400 that's there, and let's say 300 of them are black, there are 46 million that are suffering, giving us the illusion that we're making progress when we're not. So that somebody might protest, they might say we're being this wealth inequality, this wealth gap, this healthcare gap, and they say, well, wait a minute, look at LeBron James, look at Denzel Washington, look at some of your big entertainers and actors, and look at some of these black doctors and lawyers. They're making, look at Johnny Cochran, he's making a ton of money. So that we would really think that this capitalist system is working for us. And actually what ends up happening is those people that they choose to put on these pedestals like this sell out oftentimes and say, oh, I made it through my hard work. Now, I'm not saying they don't work hard, but really and truly, the hardest working people in the history of America are black people. Because no other people in the history of America worked conservatively for 250 years for free. So there's no other people that work harder than us. We have a long history, even before we came here, even when we was in West Africa, even when we was in the land of working hard and building things. A long history. But they got this pull yourself from the bootstraps doctrine in order to divide and conquer. So how are we going to overcome that? I gave you a little bit of a hint in Acts chapter 5, but let's look at it in a more even direct way in the book of Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 4. Zechariah chapter 4. I'm going to begin at verse 1 of Zechariah chapter 4. I'm going to begin at verse 1 and go down to verse 6, 6 being the emphasis of what we're reading here today, from 1 to 6 for context. And the angel that talked with me, this is the prophet Zechariah, and the angel that talked with me came again and waked me as a man that is wakened out of his sleep, and said unto me, what seest thou? And I said, I have looked, and behold, a candlestick, all of gold, with a bowl upon the top of it, and his 7 lamps thereon, and the 7 pipes to the 7 lamps, which are upon the top thereof, and 2 golden olive trees by it, one upon the right side of the bowl, and the other upon the left side of the bowl. So I answered and spake to the angel that talked with me, saying, what are these, my master? And then the angel that talked with me answered and said to me, knowest thou not what these be? And I said, no, my master. Then he answered and spake unto me, saying, this is the word of Yahweh unto Zerubbabel, saying, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith Yahweh of hosts. Brothers and sisters, the awakening is the awakening because the Most High has prophesied that we're going to remember from whence we fell. And as most of you know, We are identifying ourselves, and most of us are coming to the consciousness of identifying who we are because of the curses that are written in the book about the Israelites that have been scattered, because of the curses written in Deuteronomy and Leviticus and Ezekiel and Jeremiah and other places. We are recognizing that we are the only people. Again, this is how Bible prophecy works. It gives you all these hints, and it points to a thing or an entity or a people whereby they're the only thing, entity, or people that fulfill all of these hints. For example, it never says the word Roman Catholic in the Bible. It never says that word. But it talks about a power rising up out of Rome that is both religious and political, that is led by one man who it describes as a little horn. There's only one entity that fits the description, coming out of Rome, led by one man, a religious and a political power. Only one entity that fits that description. Also, of course, has a history of war with the saints. There's only one entity that fits that description, and that's the Roman Catholic Church. And that's how the Bible does it. Okay, it gives you hints and points to things and says, here are the hints, here are the waymarks. What does this describe? A people that look like ancient Egyptians in appearance. A people that have been placed in slavery with chains around their neck. A people whose wives would be raped and their children taken from them and sold. A people who went into slavery on ships. A people that went beyond the rivers of Ethiopia over the seas. How many people does that describe? See? So it tells us, it gives us a lot of hints, okay, of how these things are going to take place. So the Most High is awakening us in part based on our awakening as to where we fell from. And again, this is also a major question that is often asked in the so-called African American community: why us? Many people, I've asked it myself over the years. I know now, but over the years I asked, why us? Why do we always get the short end of the stick? Why are we the only ones that have to march for rights? Why are we all the ones that get hung by trees like that? Why are we the only ones that get placed on TV with our face on TV for any crime that we're accused of? Why is it us? Now we know. It's because of who we are, Hebrews, Israelites, because of the curse that's placed on us because of our fathers. Now, it also tells us, though, not just why we are awakening, but it also says in several places, which we know, we're going to come back to our God, come back to the commandments of our God, come back to obedience. How? It tells us by his spirit, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit. This is how we will overcome, divide, and conquer. This is how Ananias and Sapphira were busted. The Father's Spirit was so heavy among the disciples of the Messiah at that time. They were so dedicated to the Father and his glory in the name of the Messiah that nobody can come in and infiltrate them without risking their life, as you saw. That's one part. Another part is we're going to need to have, which we will have, leaders that cannot be bought. Leaders that cannot be bought. Let's take a look at a very good example of this in the book of Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. Yes, Hebrews chapter 11. I'm going to begin at verse 23. And I'm going to go down to verse 27. Hebrews chapter 11, from verse 23 to 27. Overcoming, divide, and conquer. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw that he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. This is important. choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of Yah than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Messiah greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who was invisible. Oh, yes. Moses was actually picked up by royalty. It's as if somebody took somebody that was in a ghetto, living in a bad situation. Survival rate is very low, and took them and put them in a king's palace. That's what happened to Moses. He was taken into a king's palace. He was in a ghetto. All the males were put to death. They were. Remember what Pharaoh said: if it's a female, keep it alive. He said, but if it's a male, throw it in the river with the crocodiles. In other words, all black males in Egypt were under the death penalty. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? Let me tell you something, brothers and sisters. One of the things about the awakening that as teachers we need to bring out: we don't have friends among the earthly governments. The police are not our friend. They want to kill us. The hunt is on, as it said in the Menace to Society. The hunt is on, and we're the prey. Just this week, I think it was 2 days ago, a black male was accused of going through a stop sign. They said he rolled through the stop sign. What happened as a result of this? The police chased him to his house. He got out of his car. He got on his knees in his front lawn and he raised his hands and said, I am unarmed and I am afraid. 4, no less than 4 different police officers, upon seeing this, got out of their cars, clicked and pulled out their Glocks, their 9mm Glocks, ready to kill him. What stopped them, aside from the grace of the Most High, is they were being recorded. People in the neighborhood were recording it and yelling at the cops to put their guns away. After they eventually did put their guns away, because the boy's grandmother came out with a cane, could barely walk, and stood in front of him. The police converged on him and slammed him down and arrested him. This for running a stop sign. It wasn't about the stop sign. The murder of the black male is Asatan, brothers and sisters. Why is it Asatan? Let me ask you, if we are the true Hebrews of the Bible, and our awakening is a prelude to the kingdom of Messiah, Satan's got a lot to lose. He is going to try his best to stamp out the black male. And he will continue to use the divide and conquer technique to do so. He will use women, our own women, against us. He will use those that they have chosen to become upper middle class, affluent, and rich against us, to say we're lazy. And I don't know what's wrong with black people. Why do they kill each other? Let me tell you why we kill each other. They place us in ghettos. They give us subpar education. They don't hire us for jobs. We're not qualified because we are poorly educated. They flood our neighborhoods with heroin and crack and tell us to fight over it. And for survival, we do, because we're trying to survive. Then they place all of these thug images in front of us to make us think this is how we're supposed to be. And our only alternative in all this is a couplefold. Aside from the survival game that you must play either as a pimp or pusher or whatever, you can become, aside from a drug dealer, you can become an athlete. In other words, an entertainer. You could do that. And if you do that, you have made it. You happen to be born 6'8", can shoot a jump shot, or 6'4", 300 pounds, and can move linemen out the way. Or you could run a 4.4, 4.3 40-yard dash. You can make it. That's the alternative you have. It's a game, it's a trap and it's divide and conquer. Or you could run to the church, to white Jesus. He'll save you. I think we need to be real with ourselves, brothers and sisters. The Black Panther Party has been destroyed. Malcolm X's movements have been destroyed. The Civil Rights Movement did nothing for us. We got a Voting Rights Act. We still can't vote. They gerrymandered the system so that they stop us from voting. So what did that do? Oh, we could walk in and spend our money in these stores. That's not helping us, though. Divide and conquer. The Black church, so-called Christian church, hasn't helped us. It's been a failure. For if it was helpful to us, we wouldn't be in this situation, because in every ghetto, there's churches on every other corner. It's not helping us. We need something that's going to be effective, something that's going to get results, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith Yahweh. The Father is intending on bringing forth the 144,000. The hallmark of the 144,000 is the Father's name is written in their foreheads, which means that his spirit and them have become one. We talked about having leaders that cannot be bought. Moses was such a man. He refused the riches. At that time, Mizraim, the land of Ham, was, even to this day, I think we agree that the African land is rich in minerals and diamonds and gold and silver and platinum, and is rich. It's the most fertile land on the planet Earth. That's what it is now. Imagine what it was 4,000 years ago. Okay. So he refused to become royalty with the heathen. Moses refused in order to stay with the poor people of his bloodline, the Hebrews, that were in the ghettos. He forsook Egypt. He forsook the riches as seeing him who was invisible. See, brothers and sisters, let me tell you how serious this game is that we're in right now. We don't have time for anyone that's going to be a teacher or thinks they're appointed a teacher or a leader in this awakening to be looking for money. We don't have time. If you can't work and earn your money, you shouldn't have any. Unless you're crippled or something, blind, crippled, or you're in a situation like Malcolm X was, where they took everything from him. His house, they blew it up, took his money, took whatever he had. All he had was barely the clothes on his back, and his sister was supporting him. His sister was a major support for Malcolm X. That's the scenario that he was in. That's different. But when you start seeing so-called Israelites form 501c3 corporations, and they're asking you to donate, remember what Moses did. Remember what Moses did. Because, brothers and sisters, Judas was induced for money. Balaam was induced for money. If it works, why would Asatan change his technique? There are some brothers that I believe are sincere and just not up on this knowledge yet. So I'm speaking to you too right now. Stop looking for money. If you're going to be poor, just be poor. The Most High going to provide for you, He's going to provide for you. But we can't have people that's going to be bought. Also, the Father's Spirit must be the most important thing. Because, brothers and sisters, we talked about this many times. Part of being born again is there's a change in the attitude. such that in a very basic level, and I'm making it very basic here, it's no longer about what I want. It's about what the Father wants. And so that everything that I'll do as a born again believer in the Messiah is designed for the Father's glory. I'm not always successful in my endeavor, but that's what repentance is for. On a daily basis, I want to live and breathe the Father's Spirit so that I can be obedient to him and bring him glory, because that's all he needs from us is our obedience. That's all he wanted from Adam, obedience. Because in being obedient to the Father, you're being loyal to him. It's not very complicated, is it? It's not. So that when you start hearing people begging for money, you should know what time it is. When they have a 501c3 corporation, I don't care what color uniforms they buying, you know what time it is. Now, I know I'm going to take a lot of backlash for this, but honestly, you should know me by now. I don't care. The reason I don't care is because, brothers and sisters, not by might nor by power, but by Yah's Spirit. The Father's Spirit is the most powerful entity in the universe. There is nothing that Asatan can create or has available to overcome it. The Father's Spirit will cause us to walk on water. The Father's Spirit could raise us from the dead. The Father's Spirit will cause us to raise up people from the dead. The Father's Spirit will cast out devils. The Father's Spirit will cause us to speak whatever language we need to speak to get his message out. The Father's Spirit could cause us to overcome bullets and heat-seeking devices and bombs and radar. The Father's Spirit could cause you to escape a prison whereby 16 soldiers are chained to you, and you inside, like a Russian doll, and you walk right out, and they don't even see you. We have to be dedicated to receiving Father's Spirit and trusting only in his word. Which is why, again, I will bring up again the doctrine that's essential to us doing this is the doctrine the Bible talks about, righteousness by faith. Let's take a look at that in a couple of places. Let's just break that down. First, it starts with the righteousness by faith message of the Bible, which is the most important, in my opinion, the most important doctrine in the Bible, because it causes us to overcome all our sin. It causes us to be so dedicated to the Father that money and power and lust of anything will not induce us, because of our love for him that we get through this teaching. And it starts again with the gospel, which is outlined. Again, I want y'all to please, if anybody asks you what the gospel is, please don't say good news. That's white Jesus talking. Let's use Bible definitions as far as possible. And here it is in Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1, we'll begin at verse 16 and go down to verse 17. Just two simple verses, and yet it says it all. Romans chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. Notice what it says. The Apostle Shaul writes, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Messiah, for it, that is the gospel, is the power of Yah unto salvation, to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. For therein," that is the power of Yah, the gospel, therein is the righteousness of Yah revealed from faith to faith. As it is written, the just shall live by faith. Let's go over this real quick, since it's the most important doctrine. The gospel is Yah's power to cause us to obtain eternal life. It is Yah's power to cause his righteousness to be revealed in us. It is Yah's power that first must come through his Hebrew people. and then go to the heathen. That's why he keeps saying to the Jew first. It must come through us first because we are ordained by the Father to give it. No other people has he talked to as a nation. No other people as a nation that he made his covenant with. No other people has he given his laws to. To us were committed, our fathers, the oracles of Yah. He has not changed. His word will not return unto him void, but it will accomplish the thing that he pleases, and it will prosper in the thing whereto he sent it. This is the gospel. Let's continue with a couple of more examples. Let's go to, I love Romans for this purpose because it really has a lot of explanation, although we're going to touch on a couple of other books as well. But Romans chapter 5 talks about a gift, a free gift. I want to show you this. Romans chapter 5. I'm going to begin at verse 15. And I'm going to go from verse 15 down to verse 19. Romans chapter 5 from 15 to 19. But not as the offense, so also is the free gift. For if through the offense of one many be dead, that is through Adam's sin, much more the grace of Yah and the gift by grace. So this gift he's talking about comes through his grace. We don't earn it. He gives it to us. And we talked about it being what? A power. We need power. More than anything. My boy Stokely Carmichael said we need black power. He just didn't know. He didn't know what we know now. We need Yah's power of his spirit. More powerful than any black power is Yah's power. He said is a gift by grace, which is by one man, Yahushua, the Messiah, hath abounded unto many. And not as it was by one that sinned, so is the gift. For the judgment was by one to condemnation, but the free gift is of many offenses unto justification, justified, to be declared innocent. For if by one man's offense death reigned by one, watch this now, much more they which receive abundance of grace and of the gift of righteousness shall reign in life by one, Yahushua, the Messiah. Therefore, as by one the offense of one judgment came upon all to condemnation, even so by the righteousness of one, the free gift came upon all unto justification of life. Brothers and sisters, I know a lot of people say, what's about love and we should love one another. And Messiah did say we should love one another. But the main thing is righteousness. All the gifts, love, joy, peace, long suffering, temperance, goodness, meekness, faith, they come in a big ball titled righteousness. That's why Messiah is called Yahweh, our righteousness. Righteousness causes us to obey. Righteousness causes us to appreciate. And the righteousness is a gift. We don't have it of ourselves. It is a gift. It is a gift to the Hebrew first. Righteousness. Righteousness does not exist in the modern system, in the corporate structure, in capitalism. It does not exist. In theory, some of our brothers thought communism or socialism would cause righteousness. Let's take a look at that. Communism is in China, and the Chinese cannot come and go as they please. They'll be sent to camps for re-education. That's not righteousness. Cuba is socialist. Cuba is all good. No, not really. You can't hardly get toilet paper in Cuba. That's what I'm saying. But I tell you what, if you're an athlete, if you're a Cuban athlete, you can get what you need. Baseball player, boxer, Olympian, you can get what you need. That's not righteousness. And of course, I don't have to explain, we live in capitalism. It is the most unrighteous system on planet Earth. There is no righteousness in this system. Therefore, there's no fairness here. The only righteousness and fairness that we're going to get comes from the Father of righteousness. And he gives it to us through his Spirit of righteousness in the name of Messiah. This gift came through Messiah. Let's take a look at it. We'll come back to Romans in a moment. Here's another scripture. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 is a profound little verse, but it hits the nail on the head, man. 5:21, 2 Corinthians 5:21. Watch this. It says he. That's the only thing I like about it. It says he, but it should be naming the names. Like it says, for he hath made him. Let me just name the name. Shall we? Let's name the names. For Yah hath made Messiah to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that me and you, we might be made the righteousness of Yah in Messiah. He made Messiah to be sin. See, that's why Messiah said, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Some brethren are erroneously claiming that the serpent is both good and evil. Serpent is not good and evil. Serpent is straight evil. I know it was the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but the good causes death. The good in it causes death. And I like to use drugs as an example. For example, I was given painkillers for my accident. Painkillers were only for 3 days. And why? Because they're addictive. And they also destroy your liver. So they help my pain, that's good. But they cause death of your liver, that's bad. That's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Versus when Messiah went his hand to heal somebody, healed, done, period. Brother walked through villages and healed everybody. Come in one side with a bunch of sick people, walk out the other side, everybody healthy. That's what he did when he was on the earth. Tree of life. Righteousness. Yah hath made Messiah to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made righteousness in Messiah. And he intends for us to be made righteousness. This ain't about money. This ain't about denominations, 501c3 corporations. And divide and conquer can't do nothing about it. If we are given over, which we will be, this is the 144,000 and those that are with them, because there's more than just them. There's 144,000 men plus women and children, plus other men as well, just like with the apostles. There were only 12 apostles, but there was a lot of believers. Okay? If you look at the book of Acts, there's only 12 apostles, but there were more disciples, right? Same thing. There were more than 100 people in the upper room. Only 11 of the apostles was there. 144,000 is a literal number, but there's others with them. My point being, the forehead of the righteousness of the Father, of his Spirit, being given over to that in such a way that divide and conquer won't work. First of all, we'll see him coming. We didn't rehearse this too many times. The Most High, the game is up right now. The game is up. So we'll see it coming. We won't worry about it. We'll be just getting closer to our Father, more to his obedience. And Asatan uses many techniques in the divide and conquer. I already mentioned how he induces some of us to riches. It makes it sound like we made it because we worked so hard, when all of us working hard and just ain't, most of us just ain't getting nowhere. He also does it this way. Watch me very carefully what I'm about to say. Fanaticism. Fanaticism. What is fanaticism? Fanaticism is me demanding that you move according to my conscience. Fanaticism is me demanding that I be your conscience. For example, fanaticism says you need to wear a purple jacket and suit, and you need to pay for this thing, and you need to wear this uniform. Fanaticism says you have to have a beard or you're not down. Fanaticism says unless you say a higher, you are the devil. That's fanaticism. And brothers and sisters, more than one movement have been crushed out by fanaticism. More than many fanatical people. Matter of fact, there was a apostle. His name was Shimon. In one of the books, I forgot. I think it's Mark. They call him Shimon the Canaanite. Yeah, they call him Shimon the Canaanite, almost indicating some people might think, well, man, was he a Gentile? No. In this case, they called him Shimon the Canaanite because he was called Shimon. The word Canaanite is not Canaanite like in the common vernacular, like somebody that was of the bloodline of Ham that was in the land of Canaan. No, Canaanite in this case, he was a zealot. A zealot. You say, what's a zealot? Back in the time of the Messiah, there was groups of men that were Israelites that decided they were going to overthrow Rome by force. They call zealots. For example, the man that they let go and put Messiah to death is the man they set free, Bar Abbas. Bar Abbas, you ever think about his name? Son of the Father. That's what Bar Abbas means. Bar in the Greek means son. Abba, father. Bar Abbas, son of the Father. He was man's son of the Father. He was a zealot, and they let him go. Beware of fanaticism. We need to move in terms of walking with our Father in heaven according to the conviction of his word and by his spirit on our hearts. That's the beauty of the unity that the Most High is going to bring. It's not about man trying to organize himself. It's the spirit of the Father bringing the unity. The spirit of the Father making us brothers and sisters because we are of the same spirit. That is a spirit that wants to glorify Yah and be obedient to his commandments. A spirit that wants to receive a gift that we don't deserve of righteousness that will cause us to be obedient. Let's take a look at that. Ezekiel, one of my favorite ones in terms of justification by faith, is actually Ezekiel chapter 36. Let's take a look at that. Ezekiel 36, it really spells it out well. We're going to look at a couple of other verses that's very important in this endeavor. Notice Ezekiel chapter 36. By the way, a lot of the so-called other versions of the Bible, they change all these verses I'm reading to you. They change them. Change the words to take away the power and change the meaning. Yes, only the King James is the one I trust because of this. So let's take a look. Ezekiel chapter 36. Ezekiel 36. I'm going to make this short and sweet. Begin at verse 24. We're really looking at 27. But I'm going to begin at verse 24. I'll go down to verse 27 for the sake of context. Let's take a look at it. Says the Father, for I will take you, that is you Israelites, from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and will bring you into your own land. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you. That's baptism. And ye shall be clean. From all your filthiness and from all your idols will I cleanse you. A new heart also will I give you. And a new spirit will I put within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. Verse 27. Watch this now. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. Yes, brothers and sisters. There's nothing more important than having Yah's spirit placed within us because it causes us to walk in his statutes and keep his judgments and do them. His spirit causes that, not by might, nor by power, but by Yah's spirit, overcoming, divide, and conquer. One more. Look at one more. I'll show you another one. There's several beautiful scriptures that describe justification by faith. I'm going to take you to Galatians right now. And that's why a lot of the brethren that hate the Apostle Shaul's writings or try to claim it wasn't inspired, they're too proud to say they don't understand. Because if you really understood it, you wouldn't speak that blasphemous foolishness. This man was a prophet. That's going to awaken in the first resurrection. And his letters, the epistles that he wrote, his letters, they're scripture. Because they give you the most powerful things that's going to cause you to overcome all your sin if you're paying attention. Galatians chapter 2. I love this one. Galatians chapter 2. I'm going to begin at verse 16 of Galatians chapter 2 and read down to verse 20. Verse 20. So look, Galatians 2:16 gives you what righteousness by faith is. And it shows you how, at the same time, man uses these other versions to confuse it. Galatians 2:16 is one of those verses that almost every version aside from the King James has changed or taken out completely. I'm going to read it very carefully for you so that you get this. Get this one now. All right? Very important in the doctrine of justification by faith. Watch this. Verse 16 of Galatians chapter 2. Knowing, watch this, that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Messiah Yahushua. Even we have believed in Yahushua the Messiah, that we might be justified by the faith of Messiah, and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. Many people, because they're ignorant, and this is okay, we all learning, but I don't like it when people try to denounce Paul's writings simply because they don't understand it, and they don't want to just say they don't understand it. They just want to be right and be teachers and have people following them to give them money. But this is what it's talking about. Brothers and sisters, if I murdered a man, I ended a man's life, and I was caught and sent to prison for life, let's say, for ending a man's life. That was my situation. If I went to prison and I repented of my sin and I gave myself to the Father to serve the Father, even in the prison for the balance of my life, right? That does not change the fact that I took somebody's life. That man's life will never come back, whose life I took. Okay? So I cannot be declared innocent of taking the man's life because it's already done. Now, the penalty for that, Father in heaven can forgive me, but it doesn't change the fact that the man's life is taken. So to be justified by the works of the law means I can do all these good deeds, and that erases the fact that I took a man's life. That's why he says it is not, you cannot be justified by works. Because no matter what I do, I've already committed the sin. It doesn't change the fact that I sinned. So I can't be declared innocent based on whatever I do going forward. Does that mean I keep doing wrong going forward as the Christians teach? No, it doesn't mean that. Does that mean in my own strength now that I understand that I've done wrong, I'm just going to force myself by discipline to be right? No, because if you could force yourself by discipline to be right, you would not need Messiah. You would not need Father Spirit because you would have it within you already. Some people teach that foolishness, and that's why they live miserable lives, failure lives spiritually. No, you can't do it because you're determined to do it. You can't do it, although you should be determined. You can't do it because you just do all these good works and it's gonna erase your bad deeds. No, that's Catholic. That's Catholic. So what is it? It says you can't be justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Jesus Christ. The faith of Jesus Christ is the righteousness of the Father. That's what faith of Jesus means. That is his faith. That is what he lives by. Remember what Messiah said? I do nothing of myself. Whatever my Father tells me to do, whatever I see from him, that's what I do. That's the faith of Messiah. That's how we're declared innocent. Because Father made Messiah to be that snake so that he takes the blame for our sin. And Father puts Messiah, his righteousness through Messiah, on us. So we're declared innocent. And from this point on, he gives us that spirit so that we can continue to obey him. Justification by faith, the faith of Messiah. It says, even we have believed in Jesus Christ or Messiah Habashah. We believed in him. We believe in him because we believe he paid the penalty for our sins. That's believing in him. But we're not justified by that. We are justified by the faith of. See, there's in and there's of. Two little words, but all the difference in the world. And because the Apostle Paul, because this is the most important doctrine in the Bible, spends every letter talking about it. Because of that, the Christians think he's doing away with the law. And he even got a bunch of Hebrews thinking that, which is why they try to claim he's not inspired. This man is the most inspired one in the New Testament, aside from Messiah himself. He brings this doctrine. He's been the vessel that's chosen to write this here. Because this is how we're going to overcome. This is how divide and conquer will be destroyed. Okay, let's skip down. Verse 19 and 20. For I through the law am dead to the law, that I might live unto Yah. I am crucified with Messiah. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Messiah liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live. How do I live? By the faith of the Son of Yah, who loved me and gave himself for me. The righteousness of the Father. Let me break that down even more for you, because I know some people may not understand that. You say, well, is that true? Is it really Yah's righteousness is really the faith of Messiah? Is that really true? Okay, let's go back to Romans for a second. Let's go back to Romans for a moment. Let's see here. I'm trying to see if I'm trying to decide between chapter 3 and chapter 6. Are both of them powerful. I think I'm going to go with chapter 3. Yes, chapter 3. Okay. Again, faith of Messiah is Yah's righteousness. That's what causes us to be declared innocent. That's what gives us this power of the gospel to obtain salvation and to overcome sin and to reveal, most of all, Father's righteousness through us. Romans chapter 3, beginning at verse 20. I'm going to start at verse 20 and go down to verse 22. Watch carefully. Therefore, by the deeds of the law shall no flesh be justified or declared innocent in his sight. So our obedience doesn't make us declared innocent. Okay? For by the law is the knowledge of sin. That's right. So when you're looking at Yah's commandments, it makes you understand you're a sinner, because all of us have broken his commandments. Okay? But now the righteousness of Yah, see, without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets. In other words, here's a way that satisfies Yah's commandments and the prophets' commandments and statutes and judgment, and yet gets the sinner off. Here's a way. Even the righteousness of Yah, verse 22, which is by faith of Yahushua the Messiah. There it is. The righteousness of Yah by faith of Messiah. See, Messiah's faith is Yah's righteousness. That's how we're declared innocent. That's how we overcome all. And brothers and sisters, you don't need a church to tell you that. You don't need to go into somebody's building, somebody 501c3 corporation, somebody camp. You don't need none of that to overcome this, to catch this here. We are a scattered people. The promise, one of the great promises is, although we are scattered, he's going to bring us together by his spirit. That's how we overcome, divide, and conquer. Don't get it twisted. Don't try to do it in your strength. Don't get induced by a fanatic to try to do it in your strength, brothers and sisters. Dedicate yourself to Yah's righteousness is my advice. That's the word's advice. Dedicate yourself to Yah's righteousness. Oh, brothers and sisters, Satan was the original traitor. And Judas is another example. And let me tell you something. Until the day Messiah busts in the clouds with the Father, until the day when he come on that white horse in the sea of glass, until the day when we are caught up, there's going to be Judases. They are going to exist. They exist now, and they're going to continue to exist. They exist in all levels. There's multiple Judases. There's Judases in the Hebrew Israelite movement. There's Judases in the government working against us that have skin like mine and darker. There's people that are Judases in the entertainment world that act like they are friends and they're not. There's Judases everywhere. Selling out for money and power in favor of the wicked. Judas is everywhere. Not only that, we know very well over the last 400 years of the United States of America, one of the goals of our enemies is to cause us to hate ourselves. We don't like our thick nose. We don't like our thick lips. We don't like our hair. Well, my hair's a little smoother than others, but most of my brethren got thicker, woolly hair. We don't like any of our stuff, huh? Why? Why we don't like it? Because we're taught that we ugly. The most beautiful people on earth are taught they ugly. We hate ourselves. We don't even want to be around each other. Only way that's going to be solved, the only way, is not by might nor by power, but by Yah's spirit. Black Lives Matter not helping us. What they doing for us? No, seriously. See, the Black Panther Party for self-defense was about us defending ourselves. Malcolm X said we should be defending ourselves. What Black Lives Matter doing? Marching in the streets? Has that stopped our brothers from getting shot down? Did that stop the brother the other day from having 9mm pointed at him while he's on his knees? Did Black Lives Matter help that? I don't give them no props. It's time for results, man. It's time for results. And I'm putting all my chips on this one right here, on this. All my chips are coming on here, right here. On the Father's Spirit. I've known too much. I've seen too much. I'm damn near 60 years old. I've seen too much. I know better. And I ain't come this far to sell out for no money, no power, no favor among heathens. No. Brothers and sisters, we're in the last stretch right now. We're in the last stretch right now. Asatan pulling out all the stops. He got all his Judas's army coming on, man. They're going to come up on us. They're going to be looking like us. They're coming among us. But the Father's Spirit and his glory is our focus. They will never get over. They will never get over. They'll always 100, as Ananias and Sapphira, as Balaam, they will always be exposed. You see, brothers and sisters, we're only deceived when we're drawn away of our own lust and enticed. And all of us have lust. We got to be aware of them. We're not ignorant of Asatan's devices. So if we are prone to want money, he's going to induce us like that. He's going to cause rich people to say they like us. Brothers and sisters, don't be fooled. Follow Yah's word. He's going to have his people. He's going to have his sealed people. It's going to happen. The only question is, will you and I be among them? I'm determined to be among them. I'm determined. And I hope everybody else is too that wants to be on the real. Because it's coming. He's going to cause us, we're going to end up in the wilderness with just the clothes on our back. He's going to take care of these clothes. He's going to keep these clothes from getting holes in them. He's going to keep our shoes from getting holes in them. He's going to provide water from us from rock. Did you know Moses twice went 40 days without water? Elijah went 40 days without food. You know that? We're going to do that. We're going to end up doing that. Not by might nor by power, but by Yah's Spirit. We're going to end up doing that. Moses came down, no food and no water. The second time, 40 days. And he received the oracles, the 2 tables. His face was glowing. He had to put a veil over it. And the Bible says that the children of Israel didn't understand what was going to be abolished. The veil was going to be abolished so they can see the fullness of Father's righteousness. That's what he wants. For all, Moses said he wants all his people to have his spirit on them. Remember Moses told Joshua? And so now is the time. We have to believe and understand and have an experience with Father's righteousness. Brothers and sisters, people out here faking the funk, you know what? There's going to come a time you can't replace experience. Everybody will tell you that, no matter what the profession. You could get educated in something But you can't replace experience. And if you have an experience trusting in Father's righteousness, you have an experience trusting in his promises, you're going to be all right. You're going to make it. But if also you've been playing around with religion, playing around with your ego, playing around trying to get money, trying to front, and then at the last minute think you coming, you got a problem. You can't do that at the last minute. It can't, it takes time for that fruit to grow. It takes time for them fruits to get into the ground. You can't just all of a sudden do it like that. That's Catholicism. That's Christianity. The microwave salvation. Nah, that's not real. We need each moment, each day, each minute. Ain't got time to play. In the name of the Father and Messiah. Amen.